Hello and welcome. Thank you all for joining me here today. I'm Nick Kanoki, Director of Technology for the Asset Leadership Network, and I am excited for a very special program, continuation of the ongoing workshops through the National Institute of Building Sciences in conjunction with ONUMA and Cyril Verlet's CDV Systems is the Brains and Bytes Digital Twins and AI workshop. And we are excited to get into that. But before we do, we just want to thank our ALN patron members, Jacobs, Mantech, Onuma, ABS Quality Evaluations, and CGI, as well as all our organizational members who make this program possible. So thank you, and please reach out if you're interested in working with the ALN. We would love to partner with every organization in the world. And Mike, why don't you, it looks like Kimon has joined us.
Yes, but I
Yes,
am
hello.
gonna do a bit of an overview introduction. If you can put up that slide about the opening slide, Brian.
Yes. Okay.
I just want
One sec.
to say how honored the Asset Leadership Network is that the National Institute of Building Sciences asked us to work with them along with Kimono Numa and Cyril Verlet, some of our organizational members, to show how other groups of people, and we'll hear from Anto and Rick momentarily, but it's quite the honor to be participating in this demonstration of what is possible now. We need to inform leaders of organizations about what is possible so they know how to specify this. And the other thing that's great is that the Asset Leadership Network is really living up to our names by networking at the National Institute of Building Sciences 50th anniversary conference. And today, Anto and Rick are live at Realcomm conference. And it's great to have all these associations interconnected. And we'll be hearing from Rick and Anto about the IBB association that is the power behind what their companies are doing. And today, what we'll be doing is providing high-level highlights of what has been learned from the past couple months in these workshops that have been led by Kimon and had participation from many organizations, many companies, showing what's possible today. And we have a great process of showing from the owner specifying asset management governance that includes secure open standards to allow information to be shared among all these different software programs and organizations to generate the reports, the information they need to make their decisions. And this is a great way of doing it. And then we'll have Cyril show how he can take information from building information models from engineers, architects, or contractors, extract asset information about personal property or furniture, fixtures, and equipment, just whatever information is in the model. And then Kimon will prepare it for use for Anto to show the advancements they're having in HVAC controls. And this is, again, a demonstration and a workshop. People will be doing things live on the fly in front of us. And it's really exciting. And before we get into it, though, we're happy that Anto and Rick are at Realcomm and taking time out of their conference to talk with us. So why don't we go to Realcomm Live? Anto, how you doing?
Doing great, Mike. So I'm here with Rick Justice at Realcomm in Tampa, Florida. For those that are not familiar with Realcomm, it's a real estate technology conference. It's been going on for 25 years or thereabouts. And a lot of the attendees are REITs, senior sort of level REITs, and other building owners, corporate building owners as well. And there's also a side conference that goes on called IBCon, which is focusing on the technology side of specifically intelligent buildings. So we've known the Realcomm folks for quite a while, and we reached out to them after our initial outing in the AHR in January this year to see if we could have an opportunity to present what we're doing, what the coalition is doing, together with specifics like IBB and TXO to this audience, just to gauge the reaction. And so this is the first time we've done this, and we got a slot on the pre-conference day where there was not much else going on, an hour-long slot, which is just right for us. And we basically got a packed room. We had about 120 people in the room, something like that. And we gave a presentation that was very well received. The presenters were members of the coalition and some people from Monday Live as well. And maybe Rick can speak to just sort of the makeup of everything and what happened also.
I'm Rick Justice. I'm the executive director of the Coalition for Smarter Buildings. And yeah, and we're here in Tampa, I believe, with a few thousand people. But the Coalition for Smarter, the coalition is a 501c3 that was formed a couple of years ago, and we're lucky to have some of the industry's most brightest minds working on trying to reduce the barriers for the technical barriers to faster adoption for smarter buildings. That's the easiest way to describe it. And we're excited that we were given this hour-long time slot, and we're also announcing a strategic partnership with Realcomm, where C4SB and Realcomm will hopefully be working together on throughout the year, not just once a year at these conferences. But as the 501c3 has different member companies that are participating in technical projects, and you're going to hear about the IBB project as one of the most exciting, most recent. But over the past 3 years, that's been our goal, is to go assemble these bright minds to start to volunteer to work on reducing these very technical barriers. And most recently, we've been following or adopting the Linux Foundation principles to be our sort of our guideposts for everything we're doing now, which is kind of an exciting new development. And the IBB follows all that. So that's live from Tampa.
Yeah, live, and we're in one of these sort of call boxes that just big enough for the two of us and a laptop. So you see the show floor in the background there.
Well, that's
our
great.
report.
That's wonderful. And we look forward to future relationships with the coalition too. And
Right.
we're excited that this is part of it, that Kimon and Cyril working with you to demonstrate how to reduce the barriers. So let's just move on to Kimon then. Hello, Kimon.
Hello.
And
How are you doing?
I need to make it so you can share your screen.
Yeah. And I did watch the session from Realcomm yesterday.
I did
the
it, Mike.
broadcast.
Excellent. Thanks, Nick. So you can
Were
share
you
your
able to see-
screen.
Yeah.
Yeah, there was a lot
Okay,
of good
great.
discussion afterwards, wasn't
Yeah, afterwards, yeah. So thanks for sharing that with us from Realcomm. So a little bit about we started a few weeks ago with the National Institute of Building Sciences at the Building Innovations Conference. We had a session called BIMstorm, Brains and Bytes BIMstorm, Digital Twin and AI. And I'll show a little bit of that, but if you go to the BIMstorm site, you can actually sign up, just put an email, and you'll get access to the videos and other materials, including the mural that I'll be showing. It was an interactive session that started before we went to Washington, D.C., and it's continued all the way up until what's happening with Realcomm, actually, with Anto and Rick. So we have a mural here, which you can get access to through the BIMstorm site. And if I zoom way back, you'll see there's a lot of material here because we captured what was going on, and I'll zoom into parts of it. And one thing that you can actually log in and actually get access to the digital twin, the models that we're going to be showing, the assets and information about the buildings. And it's actually even sitting on the Tampa site of the convention center right now. We moved it from Washington, D.C., so it's actually sitting there in Tampa. Yeah, so that's the QR code. You can go through there. And if we go through some of this, so it was a NIBS event, the National Institute of Building Sciences. NIBS is pretty interesting because they cover a lot of different domains, basically different focus groups that they have, including what used to be called the Building Information Management Council. Now it's the Digital Technology Council. The name was shifted because it's a much broader view now. And NIBS, at the NIBS session, there were other sessions, and we were kind of the concluding one on the last day. This was the 50th anniversary of NIBS, so we're looking at what happened in the last 50 years, but also looking into the future. And we had a lot of participation. So and in this mural, you'll see in the middle, there was different themes focusing on brains and bytes. So we put brains first because we think that the human brains aren't just as important as AI as far as intelligence goes. So we had a lot of participants and a lot of different sessions with different people involved. On the Bytes section, we had a lot of technologies, and I'll zoom into a few of them. And then we had use cases that were being driven. From a digital twin perspective, it's about systems talking to each other. And like Anta will show in more detail later, these systems need to be able to communicate in simple terms. There's a lot of complexity in the background, but the systems need to be able to talk to each other at certain intervals, either real time or every 15 minutes or every hour or every year, whatever it might be. But having systems talk to each other and bringing that information to the end user's perspective. How do I get to it on a mobile device, for example, is important. We started by looking at different use cases, like I said, and one of the use cases was about, can we start, if we're building a facility, if we start from new construction, for example, or even renovations, how do we define those requirements and set up from an owner's perspective? Because this is the critical piece. How does an owner set the requirements of what they need delivered back to them, whether it's the physical building or the information about the building? And Collectus was used as one of the tools, and Cyril is on here. He's going to talk a little bit about of how this was done. But defining the requirements so we can get the data of the assets in the building into a model, into a system that is used for design construction, and then moved on into operations to manage for the life cycle. Cyril, do you want to explain a little bit about Collectus and what's going on here in this phase of the project?
Of course, thank you. Let me just show my screen here. Yes, so Collectus, the intention of Collectus is to, as Kumon said, define a structure before the project begins, but define a data structure. So it's a BIM execution plan that includes levels of LODI, level of data information that's defined for the architects, the engineers, and the contractors and subcontractors. And then through that structure, those AEC team members are provided this entire data structure, templates, files, libraries, content which they would use to build the models. But the key here is that it's not just the definition of the data and providing it. There's also a workflow that allows the owner to validate the data structure in the models to be sure that these data fields that have been defined in the BIM execution plan exist in the model. They do exist. We just want to make sure that the AEC team members are filling in that data. Okay, and again, we're not talking about LOD 3, 4, and 500 in terms of modeling. It's LODI, level of data information. Once those models are delivered, they are data rich. They've been validated by the owner without being BIM experts. And then at that point, that data is harvested into a digital twin. And in this example, it's harvested into a NUMA system, which literally takes hours to do the harvesting, locating the assets and all the data that goes along with them. And from there, it goes into a digital twin, which is, again, a NUMA system. And I think the key here is allowing the owner the ability to navigate through the building with a device, a handheld device, an iPad, whatever it is, but has a map attached to it. That's the key, is that the owners, time and again, we see owners that are trying to maintain their assets and they can't find them on a map because they don't have a map easily accessible. So thus, in this case, again, Onuma system with a map on a handheld device allows you to navigate through the building and gather whatever information you need in that handheld device, whatever device you're using, at the fingertips of the technician or the provost of the university or the real estate department or custodial. The group doesn't matter. The key is having a data structure that's open and accessible and based on a structure of a map.
That's great. Thanks,
Discuss a
Cyril.
little bit.
And one point maybe to make here is that we're obviously showing specific tools, but our focus always, even if we're using our tools, you should be able to swap these systems out. So if a different CMS system or a different tool is being used, it doesn't matter. The data has to be neutral, which we're heading to with what Anto is going to show later. Once you have this data in place in digital twin systems, that means that systems can talk to each other and be able to share information with many different applications. And Mike, I think I skipped over the assets section, so maybe we'll jump a little bit back to that if that's okay. As part of the BIM storm, you were involved, the Asset Leadership Network was involved with helping to describe what an asset is. And that sometimes there's confusion in the industry what that is about, but
Yes, the ISO 55001's great contribution to business world is saying that an asset is anything that gives value to an organization. It changes it from the depreciation accounting value of an asset to what is actually helpful in achieving the organizational mission. And owners need to understand, and many owners are understanding, that asset management gives them a top approach that allows bottom-up contribution. It's a very collaborative, inclusive approach that has people from what is currently siloed in fleet or information technology or buildings or personal property to be governed in a similar manner that Cyril had described earlier, that is established by the owner. And we're happy to know that owners such as the Architect of the Capitol now have an enterprise asset manager. The Department of Defense is having a director of facility asset management established at the undersecretary level. So this concept of asset management is really catching on. Western Area Power Administration has been doing it really well for a long time, Army Corps of Engineers, and there's many different federal owners who are on board with this, and it's very good to be able to show them examples of what to be able to start doing once they have the governance of their information specified properly, as Cyril first described.
actually one thing caught my eye here. This diagram here where you were describing physical and non-physical assets, so brand, patent, standards, whatever, governance, business process. So on the Monday live session, Anto described the total, there was a talk about total cost of ownership, but turning it into, instead of TCO, TXO, total cost of anything really, and anything that brings value, not only the ownership, but there's non-physical things like what's the value of the brand or what's the value of a patent, or when you start putting this all together, then you really get the total. It's not just the cost, but there's other factors. How do you create value for the organization?
And if you go down this graph a little bit, it all comes together at data, which then allows you to produce dashboards and reports and abilities. These handheld devices that Cyril is talking about, it all comes together on a dashboard on a phone when you follow this secure open standards approach from the very beginning, from the very top.
Yeah. So to jump back a little bit now, let's go into show a few things. That part of the Brains and Bytes was about the use of AI, and we have several examples here of other groups that are doing some pretty interesting things. So there's a group from France called WiseBIM, which has an amazing tool that it can take a paper, a PDF, a 2D document like this, whether it's a DWG or a PDF plan of a building, and they're using AI tools to analyze this and automatically generate a BIM within minutes. Basically, it gets to this point, means you can have spaces, and even it recognizes doors and windows, And that can then be used. Now it's an information model that can then, in this case, we brought it into our system to be able to immediately be used in CMMS. So this conversion, this is one of the efficiencies that are being gained with some of these AI tools of taking graphical or text data and turning it into models or databases that can then be acted on immediately. This particular building is literally a 3-minute conversion and then a 1-minute import, which could take hours to do if it was manual, and especially on larger buildings, it becomes even more critical. The other thing that we've been testing on quite a bit is using the data coming from facilities. So for operations, and then being able to use, we're testing still, I think, but it's amazing what you can already do just with these type of AI tools. Of starting to see patterns from thousands and thousands of work orders, for example, and to get insight into what's going on across this portfolio of buildings with these work orders that are coming into it from the occupants of the building, and then to be able to act on that, or to even be able to use it for generating training material. So you have all this data coming in, and Anto made a point of this actually in the last few sessions at Realcomm and Monday Live, is the standardization of data and using data from a digital twin perspective is a reason why is useful for AI. And I've presented this before too in other BIMstorm sessions. I think it's one of the best reasons to have some kind of standardization and access to the information that can then be used by tools like this. So pretty exciting on that. And there's a lot more to this. There's a lot of other AI tools that are coming out. It's just hard to keep up with it, actually. There's so much stuff happening. One other pretty interesting use case was with Corners Global out of Korea, who used the same building that we showed earlier and actually showed an emergency evacuation system for an active shooter. If you have a model, then all of a sudden you can guide the occupants in real time with sensors in the building of how to evacuate the building. Because once you have the building, you have the paths and the doors and where people are sitting, if you have access to the sensors in the building, and you can guide them with these devices that say, go this way if something happens in this part of the building. It's a pretty interesting use case there.
They
And then we also had,
even mentioned that they could lock a shooter into a certain location if they had connected locks that they could trigger from a remote location.
yeah, pretty interesting.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of other use cases that we captured during the BIMstorm. I'm not going to go over all of them here, but one of them that we're going to focus on next as Anto comes on is about the use of PADI, which is an Internet of Things, a collaboration platform, basically, that can connect these different digital twins together on the fly, pretty much. You can build apps on the fly if you have access to the data. So what we set up in the BIMstorm and through the tools that we use, we built up APIs so that all the buildings that you're seeing here are live on a server on the internet, which means they're accessible to users to view or to edit and adjust. You can take a floor plan and adjust it. This is the Collectus Tower that has a view here without the furniture. And Anto's going to show you some other views of the building later that you can turn on the furniture and see what's going on inside it, and build up apps on the fly in the PADI system and say, I want to connect this view of the model to a building automation system or sensors or other systems that are out there in the model. So the ability to quickly, here's a use case, what do I do with the data that's there? Any other thoughts before we kind of shift over? There's a lot more material here, but if you go to the BIMstorm site, you can log in and actually get access to this mural. And there are links to this. There's some other technical information down below. There are links to a lot of other documents, a lot of the presentation material directly from the mural, and on the BIMstorm site itself as well too.
The main thing that we need to emphasize is that leaders can specify a requirement for secure open data standards, and Marty will get into the concept of security during the demonstration, but none of this can happen if the owner doesn't require a use of secure open standards as the very start of whatever they're attempting to do. Once you do that, you unlock the capabilities of what Anto will be showing is, basically web-based processes. And we love transparency of data, self-correcting behavior, because it's the asset data. We're trying to manage the assets better. And guess what? It's human behavior that is the issue. It's not the technology, that's proven. It's not the processes. We have success stories all over the place. It's human behavior, and human behavior can be adjusted from leaders who want to establish a culture of continual improvement. And then all of these things that we're saying you can start doing as you can digest what's possible. Cyril, did you want to say something?
I do. Come on, can you go back to the image on the lower left corner, please? Because there was, I know we discussed the standard structure for new buildings, but I wanted to make sure that there was an understanding about your existing buildings too for these owners. So if you zoom into the actual image that has all the silos in it. So one of the perceptions that owners have is, I've got these existing buildings, they're in CAD, they're in PDF files, and I've got to convert them all to BIM. That's absolutely not true, and it's not required. From our perspective, we've seen a variety of silo types within any institution. They have CAD, they have legacy BIM, they have PDFs, they have Excel files. This data can all be consolidated into a digital twin that includes a map, and it can be.
That's great, Cyril. I'm glad you mentioned this.
I wanted to make sure that it was understood that for existing data, for existing models, it's 90% of your portfolio. There's a workflow for this as well. And again, the mindset from the senior staff within the institution is it's based on a map. That's the key. So if we can somehow harvest the data or consolidate the data into this data structure for new buildings, great. There's
let's
a data
get
structure
into the demonstration of just that.
Right.
Yeah, this is a good segue actually to Anto, because he's going to show how these silos get broken. And actually, the other point I'd like to make about these silos is that we've been living with these for years and years, even before these technologies came around. And there's a lot of discussion about AI is hallucinating, right? Because it doesn't have good information. But we've been hallucinating as an industry because we haven't had access to this information regardless. So it's really up to us to decide how to use these technology and how to secure them as well, too. There's a question from Marty about security. Yes, that's very important. And Anto, are you ready to show your screen?
Yes, I am.
Oops, we can't.
If you
Okay, so I'm going to stop sharing.
find the button.
So let's pretend that the owner required secure open standards, and Cyril harvested the BIM and then handed that information to Kimon. Kimon set it up and in a cloud native way. And so take it away, Anto.
Yeah, so I'll show basically a few slides very quickly just to frame the demonstration. And the way we are sort of thinking and presenting this is way forward that is cloud native. And so and a lot of people are not really sure what cloud native is. Cloud native isn't necessarily the cloud. It is computing entities that behave as if it's in the cloud. So it doesn't necessarily have to be in Azure or AWS. It can actually be elsewhere, but it is behaving like it was in the cloud. That makes everything equivalent. So that is really the power of it. And so we're sort of presenting it, which is very much in line with the conversation so far, is that a building is an asset which is made up of silos, and it is a necessary fact to have silos, because silos is the way we get the best HVAC systems for our building and the best fire, energy, and everything else, right? Silos is kind of the way of doing that. But communicating between silos has been really, really difficult. And the reason for that is the same. It's because everybody in each of the silos are focused on their communication protocols, their communication practices, et cetera, which is in most cases totally incompatible with any other silos that exist in that building, right? So making them generically talk to each other is really difficult, and we've been trying that for 30 years. So the the way we think about this is that rather than trying to make them point-to-point connections point-to-point from within the silos, what we do is we create an abstraction, a cloud-native abstraction, which is effectively a digital twin. So it's abstracting a certain set of information, so it is providing that to the cloud native abstraction, and it is also getting data from the cloud native abstraction in a two-way sort of way, right? So this is the definition from the Digital Twin Consortium of a digital twin is exactly that. It's a virtual representation of physical objects. So this is really what it is. Once we do that, everything in the cloud native layer is then equivalent or can be made to be equivalent, right? Because they're sort of peers effectively. So all of the problems that I was saying about the protocols within the silos, that all disappears because they all talk cloud native. So with that, we can then create a new type of connections between these systems that exist in silos that are very specific to the purposes of the thing that the user or the operator needs to do. Right, so it's allowing use cases to go across silos to be defined and to be defined as standard that we are creating and we're proposing to be used. So this is a great architecture, except that it's for many the cloud, and they have no easy way of connecting to the cloud. So we had to construct this concept called the interoperable building box, which is really open source software that's whose purpose is to connect buildings to the cloud source. So once it's finished, anybody can download it and install it, either in a physical device that then gets manufactured and installed by a HVAC contractor or engineer, or it can be installed in a virtual environment in the building. But it's always on-prem. The reason it's being on-prem is all of the problems with cloud, right? Because you no longer have any latency issues if the IBB is on-prem. You know, it's local, and you have much less, significantly less sort of reliability issues because you're not relying on the internet to do anything. Everything's just connecting to the IBB, and it runs Docker.
We're having a little,
Any problem?
yeah, so please turn off your camera, and I think that'll buy you some bandwidth and make things a little smoother. Thank you.
Okay. So this basically makes the building cloud native. That's what the IBB is designed to do. Sort of the bigger picture architecture of the IBB is that we anticipate a whole bunch of IBBs in buildings of different sizes. The IBBs will be at different sizes, different capacities, etc. And they all report to the concept that we call cloud management platform. So this could be platforms that are created by multiple vendors to do very different things. And what we've done in the IBB project is we've created such a platform, and that's basically what we're doing with the PADI platform that Kimon was mentioning. But the important thing is that the interface between the IBB and these platforms is made open and available. So everything in the IBB architecture is open. So how does this work? Quite simply, you have an IBB in a building like this. That IBB will have things in it that would have been configured. So there could be a building automation system connected through BACnet. There could be other IP controllers. There could be IoT devices in the building. You know, this is kind of a typical mishmash of different things and different ways that they're connected to the cloud or not, as the case may be. And let's say that we want to install an energy bot that is an AI. We want to do is that when this being installed, it makes a declaration, and the declaration is basically what I've written here. It will say something like, I consume energy data about Acme HQ, right? So that's the sort of English version of it. In the technical terms, they're actually sending bits and bytes and codes, obviously, to do that. So this declaration is made to the IBB. There's a broker function in the IBB. So what the IBB does is it looks at that and says, okay, so there's this guy, there's this new thing that wants energy data about Acme. Let's find what has previously declared availability of energy data about Acme HQ. And for each one of the ones that it finds, it will establish a connection immediately between those systems. Right, so that's it. It just does it. Right. I mean, it literally just does it. And so all of the connections are made and data flows so the bot can do its thing. This whole thing is dynamic, so that let's say a month later, a new application is installed that allows utility connection to this building. Then that would then be installed in a similar way, and because it also provides energy data about Acme, it then creates a connection is automatically created as well. So this is how it all works. And if I draw this a different way, this is basically the same diagram as I showed 2 slides ago, right? So the different, all of the different systems that you see here being abstracted to the IBB, and these connections are being established using it. Right, so that's kind of how everything. I can jump to the demo unless you have any questions.
Well, this
Mike,
might be a good time to address the security question. And if Rick can help you with that, I think that is what the Coalition for Smarter Buildings is doing, is working together to address both the interconnectivity and security.
Yeah, so the security mechanism of all of this is in the way that the application is installed. A system that installs that, and that's the whole rationale of what I was showing you earlier, the cloud platform. So the cloud platform provides each of the IBBs the security policies that is that the platform defines, right? So the IBB is adhering to whatever security policies that the platform that is managing it. What it then does, it uses those security policies when any application, when any system is declaring itself and its capabilities. So when it says that I can consume energy data, as part of doing that, it would provide its credentials to the broker to say, I'm allowed to do this, and these are my capabilities. So that's the way it does that. And all of the systems would have done the same thing, right? So once the connection is created, these blue line connections, they can only have been created by all of the systems that have gone through the credentialing mechanism that is defined by the cloud platform.
Okay.
Right, so that's the way we think about that. So really everything is effectively a security realm within an IBB or within a broker. So
Thank you.
So let's jump into the demo. So what we have here is the PADI platform. It's also available on as a different URL, but basically it has all the same functionalities. And the platform is a collaborative platform, and so what I've built here is an application for my buildings, right? So all of the buildings that I'm interested in doing demos. And one of those buildings that I'm going to use here is the Fior building, which has been used as part of the BIM-Storm. And so what we're looking at here is the Fior building that was installed using information from the BIM model that was provided by the Onuma system, right? And so it knows there are 3 floors, and it knows that floor 2 looks like this. I think my internet's not that fast here, so there you go. It'll be good enough. So this information came from the BIM model, right? And what we're really doing is displaying it. There's floor 1, there's floor 3, and et cetera, et cetera. So it's all pretty much the same. But what we're then able to do, in addition to just bringing in the let's say the basic floor plan, is to add applications, right? So we added an application here called Details, and what that's going to show us, it's probably going to ask me to log in, which is perfectly fine.
this is part of the security layer. You have to log in to get the details, right?
That's a sort of another layer of it. Yeah, security is all about layers. You're absolutely right. So this is the same BIM model as what we saw before, except it has a lot more details. And this is basically the Onuma system working within the PADI platform. So I can highlight a space, or I can pick a specific component, and I'll just pick this chair and double click it, and I see all the details about that particular object, including a note that I think I put there. This chair is broken, that I put yesterday. So this is live. The data is coming from the BIM system. So if Kimon made some changes to the BIM model, it will be reflected here at worst after a refresh, right? So it's dynamic. And we're also I installed the Double Fox application into floor 1, and it's just going to bring that up, and there's your floor plan. And I want to show you just one thing. So floor 2, as you see here, doesn't have anything else other than the basic floor plan. So what I want to do is show you how you install things in this platform. So in floor 2, I want to install, and this is the marketplace. It's the applications are stored here. I'm not allowed to say App Store, but there you go. And so there's like any marketplace, there's sort of different ways of filtering stuff. So if I say I just want the BIM apps, then it shows all the various BIM apps. And what I want to do is I want to install this one, the Onuma plan, which is effectively a more detailed view. And I do that, and it will ask me what I want to call it. So I'll call it details, for want of a better name, but it's just a name, like a name of a file. And it will install that and show the detail view, right? So if you notice, I haven't had to configure much at all. I mean, the only thing was what to call it, right? And it knows that it's on floor 2, so it knows to draw the right floor plan. In other words, it knows which part of the BIM model to actually display here in order to display details. And you can obviously just install applications beyond this. And maybe Rick, you can talk about sort of the layering of this, and leading up to sort of TXO.
And one thing to add on to is
Sure.
that this is coming from. I'm sorry. Go ahead. Yeah, I was just going to make a point that these are coming in live from the servers. Are basically the systems are talking to each other. So if changes happen to the floor plan, it's not just a static plan; it gets updated, and that's the key point about these systems talking to each other.
Yeah, and what we were the main point we're making, and to other vendors that have other sorts of systems, other kinds of data types, including the HVAC and controls companies with their systems, is that what this does is establishes a consistent way for that loading of the systems, and that consistency is then what allows for the security. It allows for the the speed. It allows for all these different attributes that everybody's looking for, which is make systems easier to work together. And that demonstration of this systems is helping the other of the other sorts of systems towards this.
Think about
Anto and Rick, we're having a lot of problems hearing. Maybe if you stop sharing while you're talking.
Is there a phone number they can call, Mike?
You could phone in also if you go to, yeah, I'll get you a phone number also.
I've stopped the share, so maybe you can. This is working better.
We can hear you better now, yes. So if Rick could repeat what he was saying, that would be helpful. It would broke up a lot.
Well, it was just describing that one of our things we're demonstrating using the BIM system and the other systems that you just saw of other vendors of other sorts of systems, other software and people who want to create innovative new software. This thing that we're doing here is establishing the concept of the abstraction, the concept of the connections, and that's cool too.
Audio broke up a little bit.
Yeah, it
Did
did.
I come across okay?
Broke up a little
Maybe I
bit.
could,
Yeah,
maybe I can make
Colin,
a
if you
point.
could kind of express
Yeah.
what he was saying.
Yeah, the abstractions, just to kind of put it in simple terms, we're not loading the entire, so the entire BIM that Cyril described that we would use for design and construction is important for that use case, right? In this case, we're saying for operations, we want to be able to see the shape of the building, the shape of the floor, the location of that asset, and a lot of data related to that. It's the same data, but it's abstracted to a level that we can then link it into Patty and view that particular one. Just like we hid the furniture and equipment and only showed the spaces earlier. Same concept there, that we only want to see the spaces. Then we load another app that says now we want to see the equipment. So it just becomes a much easier way to tailor the view to that user's perspective and only show, in fact, this is a view in our system now, but it's the same view. The view that Anto was looking at is the same thing here. And if I said, okay, I want this information about this piece of equipment, or even moving it, I could actually go and say, I'm going to update it and change the location. Then you're able to edit it here, and then you would see immediately the changes that would happen in the Patty system as well, without having to understand the entire structure of the BIM for design and construction.
Right. And I think that's the power of a digital twin that allows you to move things like assets, walls, occupants, room objects, room numbers, room names, whatever edits that need to happen in a planned structure, and then that gets propagated through the entire system. But the foundation is the digital twin.
Right.
So
To kind of
Guillermo,
take it back. Yeah, go ahead.
Guillermo asks an important question about the workflow, and he's talking about how he's using Revit. And this is a good example of why we're the Asset Leadership Network. And Guillermo, the workflow that you can learn about a number of ways. You can watch past episodes of the Bytes and Brains workshops that we've been having, but really this isn't something for you to do on your own in service of the owner. You're not going to learn how to do these flows unless an owner says, I want the information to be flowed this way. And then since you're working with Revit, what you would do would be interconnect with Cyril, and you would give your model to Cyril, and Cyril would harvest the information from your model to be able to use in this process. It's that simple, but the owner has to specify it.
Right.
That's
Yeah. Mhm.
the main reason that we came to Realcom is to get that interaction and to get the feedback from and they're starting to realize there is currently a problem, so we're overcoming that.
Yeah. Well, I think this combination of companies and associations working together to show these workflows is very good evidence for owners that they could trust specifying this approach.
And I think that's absolutely the key, is the data structure. I mean, we speak with owners all the time, and they'll tell us, oh yeah, we get these Revit models all the time, but we shelve them because the data structure isn't useful. The data structure isn't rich. It's not data rich, or it's inconsistent from one model trade to the next, or from one project to the next. And so having a consistent data structure from the very beginning, I think, is the key. And then from there, the owner can just monitor that data structure throughout the entire design, documentation, construction, And when the models are delivered, they're data rich. And that's where the data truly comes from, because the ideal folks making these maps are your AEC team members. They're the key guys. They're the experts that know what they're doing. And
girls.
and women, of course, yes. Of course.
Yeah. Just on that the data models, as I was showing earlier, the blue lines, and they effectively go across silos, right? And the way to think about them is that they represent a standardized way to do something, right? Maybe that something is as simple as turning on a light, or it may be as a grid signal to say use less energy, or that are across those blue lines are typically very simple. They're sort of orchestration things. So they don't involve some nitty-gritty of how a VAV works and BAS system, that kind of stuff. It's really just the overrides and the information that will allow them to work better as silos to all of the different silos. So it's a use case, standardizing the use case. We talked a lot about standards earlier.
Yes.
Absolutely.
Kimo?
Yeah, this is great. Actually, I opened up Patty again, and this is kind of another view of the same model. This is more about basically the digital twin structure of models talking to each other versus actually looking at it in kind of a model view of either work orders or the plan view that we talked about earlier, or a list of assets and attributes about those assets. There's so many different angles. There's a lot of data happening in the background. But with Patty, you're able to focus on that specific use case and that end users, what are they trying to get to? Do they really need furniture plans, or are they just looking for the layout of the building for exiting, for example, like we talked about earlier with the emergency planning that we showed? But they're all coming back to the same information. You're not duplicating it all over the place. You're essentially linking it together. So when you look at the graph view, it's really kind of that linking that's happening throughout all these different the portfolio buildings that we showed earlier, and what you're trying to get to. And the part that excited me most about when you showed this demonstration is how easily you can actually install new apps, right? If the apps are available and you say, well, I want a mapping app, or I want a BIM related app, or the BIM apps. Okay, here's DabbleFox with custodial planning and BIM Genie with CMS. It depends on what you're trying to get to, and then you install that app, and then it just shows up in the interface, and you get access to it, and you can start working with that. Okay, actually, here's the Tampa model here. We're seeing the Tampa model, and then we're going directly into the Collectus apartment that's sitting there on the waterfront, and we're getting to the 5th floor, and we're submitting a request, for example, and that would go into the dashboards that you're tracking it. So there's so many different angles to this. But what's typically happening in the industry is these silos are so broken up that you have to say, okay, we have to export it from one system and import it to the next, versus plugging these things together and just making them work.
Well, I think this has gone really well. We do not need to fill the entire hour. Anto and Rick, do you have anything that you can say briefly with your limited bandwidth?
I think we've covered a lot. I think this has been really good. The sort of the motivation in a way for doing this is to allow innovation to happen, right? So think about and then some software developer creating their way of displaying a floor plan. Right? Maybe it's just different styling, or maybe it shows completely different information. They can do that, and they can put it in the marketplace, and then lots of people can install that very easily on different models, on different BIM models for different buildings. So it becomes a way of distributing little bits of applications that do very specific jobs. In my example, to show a floor differently, but it could be anything that would have some value to the owner. So
First
thank
responders.
you for the opportunity of being.
Sorry.
No, thank you, Anto and Rick. This has been great. Cyril, what were you going to say?
I'm sorry for interrupting, Anto. Yeah, I think first responders, custodial, real estate, there are so many different departments within an institution that could benefit, and thus so many different applications, as Anto was describing, that are possible, but all with this umbrella of an app loading into sort of linking into this digital system. It's really just brilliant, and it's very slick. This is what it should be.
I'm glad you like it.
Indeed. Good stuff.
Kimon?
Yeah, so just to wrap it up, there are links on the mural, but one thing I wanted to mention is that this paper called the Digital Twin for the Built Environment from the National Institute of Building Sciences, it's been in the works for over a year now. And Cyril and I are both in the committee. I'm the chair of the data framework. It's going to be published next week. It kind of gives you it's a position on how to use digital twins. It includes the use of AI in it, and looking at systems talking to each other, and many different types of systems. So in this paper, you'll see a lot more details coming out next week, so coming soon. And we also are going to be publishing a paper coming out of this Brains and Bytes. All this massive amount of information that we've collected, we're going to try and boil it down into a paper that will be shared through ALN and through NIBS.
Mainly through NIBS. This is a NIBS project we're happy to
Yes,
be
of course.
contributing to. And what the ALN might do is ask people if they want to participate in the creation of a specification template that owners can use, because Guillermo isn't the only one who's confused by everything that's here. Where do you start? And I think that our network knows how to guide them to that. So I'm running that up the flagpole, everybody. Let me know if you want to participate in the creation of a template specification for data information standards, or, the committee, the group will decide what to call it, but template specification. And it seems like we should be doing a program in July about the digital twins paper. So
Yeah.
we're going to be taking a bit of a break.
Yeah,
Go ahead, Anto.
just to alert you of a project within the coalition called the Div 2525, which is actually a framework to help people for specifying buildings. Maybe we can take that up as a topic of coalition and ALN.
Yeah,
and other organizations.
that sounds great, Anto. Love to participate in that and figure out our angle, whether it sits on top of or next to or whatever is going on there.
Cool.
So,
Thank you.
Kimon, if you could stop sharing your screen, I want to try to end in our typical manner. We're so happy that this worked out so well. Really happy to be participating. And let me make that a little bigger. And so thank you for everyone. Rick, sorry we didn't have you on the screen here. Rick Justice, Executive Director of the Coalition for Smarter Buildings. We thank you too, Anto, Kimon, Cyril. And of course, thank you to our patron members, Jacobs, Mantech, ABS Quality Evaluation, CGI, and of course, Onuma. And all of our organizational members, including Collectus and 26 Degrees. So we will be taking a break next week, and the 4th of July is on a Thursday, so we won't be having an ALN Thursday at 3 on the 4th, and we'll probably take the 11th off also. But it seems like maybe we come back with a digital twins paper as a ALN Thursday at 3 discussion. We will let you know. The newsletter will be continuing to go out, so you can look to our ALN newsletter to know when we'll be back live. But I really love ending this first half of the year of ALN Thursday at 3 on this program. It was really good. Thank you, Anto and Rick, for joining us out of Realcomm and taking time off of the floor. I know it's exciting to go out and meet people and do things there. So enjoy the rest of that today. And Cyril, thanks for logging in, and Kimon too. Appreciate
Thank you.
all the attendees today and those in the future. Appreciate you checking us out.
Thank you, Mike.
Thank you.
Bye
Thanks,
for now.
Mike.
Bye-bye. Thank you.